Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we are continuing on with A Dream Between Us, and we are also finishing it up. This video will be chapters 6 through 10, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of this fic. Chapter 6, Unintended Miracles. A taxi pulled up outside the police precinct, its engine humming softly in the early morning light. Kirishima's hands were fidgeting on his lap, tightening around the straps of the bag that held Riku's essentials. Bakugou sat beside him, arms crossed, eyes scanning the street with a habitual edge. Neither of them spoke much, words felt unnecessary, yet the silence carried the weight of everything that had happened in the past few days. When they stepped inside, a detective led them to a small, neutral interrogation room. A woman was sitting in the corner, shoulders hunched, her hands tightly clasped together. Her hair fell in disarray over her face, shielding her gaze. She flinched slightly as the door opened, her eyes darting towards Kirishima and Bakugou, but there was no recognition in them, just fear. "Takumi Yume," the detective asked gently. "These are the pro-heroes who helped you. They wanted to make sure you were safe and ask you a few questions." The woman froze, blinking rapidly. Her voice was barely a whisper. Red Riot?" Kirishima stepped forward slowly, keeping his hands visible, letting his voice soften. "Do you remember me? From the building that collapsed? I was the one who—" He paused, searching her eyes for a flicker of recognition. She flinched slightly, hugging her arms to herself. I don't want to see that again," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I know," Kirishima said gently, taking a careful step closer. "I know it was scary. I just want you to know you're safe now. We're here to help, not hurt." She swallowed hard, eyes flicking between him and Bakugou, and finally nodded, though her body still trembled. Kirishima's chest tightened at the sight of her fear. It was unmistakable, raw, and he wanted more than anything to reassure her, but he knew patience was the only thing that would work. Takumi swallowed, her fingers tightening on her knees. I remember." Bakugou, leaning against the wall, cut in abruptly, voice low but sharp. "You're alive. That's what matters." Takumi blinked, startled. Bakugou exhaled more to himself than anyone else. "But we need to know what you can do. Your quirk. Everything." Takumi's lips pressed into a thin line. "My quirk is called Dream Sculptor. I can bring what I dream into reality, but it's dangerous, unstable. I don't—" Kirishima's stomach dropped and his mind went spinning. "Wait, so when He trailed off, the memory flashing unbidden. The dream he had had, the baby, the overwhelming feeling of love and hope. He glanced at Bakugou, who was watching him warily, sensing his sudden tension. "Hey, what is it?" Bakugou asked, voice low but edged with urgency. Kirishima shook his head, trying to process. It's hard to explain, but when I was helping you, Takumi-san, I felt this warmth, this—" Takumi's eyes softened at the description, a flicker of recognition passing across her face. That sounds like the way my quirk can manifest things, but I never thought I never thought it could—" He looked down instinctively. Riku, small and perfectly real in his arms, gurgling softly. The woman's gaze softened when she saw him. He's yours?" she whispered. Kirishima swallowed, his gaze dropping to Riku, who cooed quietly in his carrier. I think so. I dreamed about him, and when I woke up, he was here. Bakugo's eyes narrowed, disbelief flickering across his face.
You're telling me he's real because of your dream?
The room went quiet. Takumi's expression softened, a mixture of awe and confusion on her face. Kirishima's throat tightened. I guess somehow I did this. Bakugo ran a hand through his hair, pacing slightly, muttering.
So you made him real because you wanted a family?
Kirishima looked down at Riku, the tiny life in his arms, filling him with an emotion he hadn't fully realized before. Yeah, more than I knew. For a moment, the three of them sat in stunned silence, the enormity of it sinking in, and yet, in the quiet, there was a fragile, almost sacred hope, the possibility that something born from fear and confusion could also be rooted in love. Chapter 7. Dreams Made Real. The ride home was quiet, the city lights blaring past the windows as Kirishima clutched Riku's blanket against his chest. Bakugo sat beside him, arms crossed, jaw tight, eyes flicking occasionally to the small bundle in Kirishima's lap. Neither of them spoke. Words felt heavy, dangerous, almost unnecessary. When they finally stepped into their apartment, the familiar smells and dim lighting did little to ease the tension. Kirishima set Riku down gently in his bassinet, smoothing the tiny blanket around him. He lingered for a moment, fingers brushing over the baby's small hand, before looking over at Bakugo. Kirishima started, clearing his throat. We should probably talk about all of this. Bakugo didn't answer right away. He dropped onto the couch, staring at the floor, hands clasped tightly.
Yeah,
he muttered finally, voice low.
We need to figure out what the hell just happened.
Kirishima sat on the arm of the couch, heart hammering. I know, it's a lot, and I didn't even realize how much I wanted this until now. Bakugo's eyes flicked up at him, sharp and unsure, searching for something.
Wait, you're saying you wanted a kid?
Kirishima shook his head quickly. Well, not like this, not exactly. I mean, I didn't know it would actually happen. I didn't think it could. He paused, rubbing the back of his neck nervously. But maybe, I think I did. Maybe more than I realized. And I didn't talk to you about it either. I should have. Bakugo leaned back, running a hand through his hair.
Yeah, well, congratulations, we're parents now. And somehow we skipped all the planning.
Kirishima chuckled nervously, then winced at the sound. Yeah, I guess we did. He sat down on the couch beside Bakugo, hands still fidgeting. I mean, it's scary. I won't lie. I don't even know how to be a dad. Not really. But I want to try. I want to try for him. For us. Bakugo looked at him, his usual edge softened by something almost vulnerable.
And you actually wanted all of this? The whole family thing?
Kirishima hesitated, eyes dropping to Riku again. Yeah, more than I knew. And I think I want to do all of this with you, if you want to, too. Bakugo's hands flexed, his fingers gripping the couch.
I don't know how to do this,
he admitted finally, voice rough.
But I don't want him to be alone. And I guess that means I want to be here. For you and for him.
Kirishima's chest tightened, a mix of relief and awe flooding him. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the revelation settling between them, but the quiet no longer felt suffocating. It felt fragile, tentative, but alive. He reached out, brushing a hand against Bakugo's. We'll figure it out. Together. Bakugo's jaw flexed, his usual defensiveness melting into something softer, almost fragile. For a heartbeat, they just looked at each other, the weight of everything they'd just admitted hanging between them. Then, almost instinctively, Bakugou leaned in, capturing Kirishima's lips in a desperate, grounding kiss. Fierce, tender, and full of the emotions they hadn't yet found words for. Kirishima responded immediately, wrapping an arm around Bakugou, holding him close as if neither of them would ever let go. It wasn't long before Riku stirred softly in his bassinet, and they pulled back just enough to glance at him, foreheads resting together, breathing synchronized.
Yeah,
Bakugou murmured, voice rough, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth.
Together.
They had no idea how they got here, but one thing was certain. They were in this together, and no matter how overwhelming all of this was, they could face it as a family. Chapter 8. Splashes and Firsts. Kirishima hummed softly as he filled the baby's tub with warm water, a small affectionate smile tugging at his lips. The apartment was quiet in the afternoon light, soft shadows stretching across the wall. Everything still felt surreal, so new, but today was the first time they had truly felt like parents. Bakugou leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching with a mixture of curiosity and something softer, harder for him to show. He hadn't volunteered to help with the baby yet, but he stayed nearby, glancing from Riku to Kirishima. "I'm telling you, Kat," Kirishima said, laughing as he turned toward him. "I got this. You just hang back and watch, or, hold him if you're feeling brave." Bakugou scowled.
"I'm not holding him. He's a damn baby. That's not...
He trailed off, eyes flicking to Riku, who let out a tiny squeal of impatience. Kirishima grinned at the sound, lifting Riku gently. "See? He's already talking back. You're missing all the fun, man." Bakugou snorted, but he didn't look away.
"Yeah, right. Fun."
His jaw twitched.
"I didn't sign up for this."
Kirishima crouched slightly, placing Riku into the warm water. The baby immediately kicked and splashed, cooing delightedly. "Look at that! Already loving it!" Bakugou's stance softened, arms uncrossing a little, though he still hovered at the edge.
"You sure you don't need help?"
"Nope," Kirishima said with a grin, running a washcloth over Riku's tiny arms. "Just hold him for a second. See how it feels. You'll survive." Bakugou hesitated, eyes narrowing.
"Which parts? Hold him for a sec."
"The part where you get to be his dad," Kirishima said, leaning closer. "Come on, might as well start now." Bakugou stared at him, frozen, until his eyes fell on Riku. The baby's damp hair clung to his forehead, and he blinked up from the bath, little hands reaching towards Kirishima's face. He exhaled sharply, bending down.
"Fine, but I'm not doing all the baby stuff, all right?"
"Deal," Kirishima said, passing Riku into his arms. For a moment, Bakugou just watched. The little body was surprisingly warm, surprisingly heavy. And when Riku looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes, Bakugou's chest tightened. "See?" Kirishima whispered behind him. "Not so bad." Bakugou shot him a glare, but there was something soft in it. Something that hadn't been there before. Kirishima stepped closer, resting a hand on Bakugou's shoulder. "You're doing great, Bakugou's lips twitched, almost like a smile.
"Shut up, idiot."
Riku kicked his tiny legs enthusiastically, sending droplets of water flying in every direction. Kirishima laughed, ducking. A small splash landed on his face. Bakugou groaned, arms crossed at the sight, then gave a reluctant chuckle as a particularly ambiguous spray soaked his hair. "He's a little firecracker, isn't he?" Kirishima said, water dripping from his shirt. Bakugou just huffed, but the corners of his mouth twitched upward. Riku, now snugly in a towel, yawned and curled into Bakugou's chest. Kirishima leaned down slightly towards Bakugou, brushing wet strands of hair from his forehead, and kissed him softly. The warmth between them was a stark contrast to the damp chaos around them. It was brief, but full of everything they hadn't said in words yet. Awe, fear, joy, and the strange, perfect reality of being parents together. Kirishima's arms drew Bakugou and Riku closer, and then one hand came up to cradle Bakugou's face, deepening the kiss for just a heartbeat longer. "All right," Kirishima said softly, brushing Bakugou's hair back. "Bath done. First mission complete." Bakugou adjusted his grip on Riku, looking down at the baby.
"Yeah, first of many, I guess."
Kirishima chuckled, resting his forehead against Bakugou's. Together. Bakugou's arm tightened around both of them.
"Yeah, together."
They looked at each other, soaked and laughing quietly, and in that messy, splash-covered moment, it felt like the first real moment of their new life together as a family. Chapter 9. First Words. The afternoon sun slanted through the curtains, throwing lazy stripes of gold across the living room floor. Riku was on his blanket, surrounded by toys that seemed far too big for his tiny hands. Blocks, a rubber teething ring, and a stuffed shark that Bakugou still refused to admit he'd bought. The apartment was quiet except for the soft babble of Riku's voice, a stream of nonsense syllables that Kirishima swore were starting to sound like words. Kirishima sat cross-legged beside him, red hair tied back messily, smiling as Riku tapped a block against another. "You're getting good at that, little man," he said, leaning over. "Soon you'll be telling us off like your dada over there." From the kitchen, Bakugou grunted without looking up from his mug.
"Oi, don't teach him bad habits already."
Kirishima laughed. "What, talking?" Bakugou shot him a glare, but the corner of his mouth twitched. He'd been pretending indifference for weeks now, but his eyes always followed Riku's every movement, softening in spite of himself. Riku squealed, waving a block triumphantly in the air. Kirishima gasped dramatically. "Look at that! He's showing off for you, Cat!" Bakugou rolled his eyes.
"You're worse than him."
"Maybe," Kirishima said, grinning. "But I think he's about to say his first word, aren't you, buddy?" He leaned forward until their noses almost touched. "How about Papa?"
Bakugou groaned. "Oh, don't start that crap."
"Come on, humor me," Kirishima said, his voice soft and teasing. "Say it, Riku. Papa. You can do it." Riku blinked up at him, tilting his head curiously. Then, as if considering the request, his mouth worked soundlessly for a moment before a small, clear sound escaped. "Pa-pa." The room went utterly still. Kirishima froze, eyes wide. Bakugou's mug hung suspended halfway to his lips. For a second, neither of them breathed. Then Kirishima's grin broke across his face like sunrise. "He said it," he whispered, voice trembling. "He said it! Did you hear that?" Bakugou blinked, stunned.
He didn't mean..."
But Kirishima was already laughing, swiping at his eyes. Okay, he got Papa down. Think he's got one more in him?" He leaned closer to Riku, voice low and coaxing. "How about Dada, huh? Can you say Dada for me?" Riku blinked up at him, tilting his head, then almost as if he understood the game, he turned toward Bakugou instead, his mouth moving soundlessly for a beat, concentration furrowing his tiny brow, and then, clear as anything, "Dada!" Riku giggled, proud of himself for the noise he'd made, and reached towards Bakugou with both hands. "Dada!" Bakugou's throat worked soundlessly. The mug hit the counter with a dull thunk. His face had gone completely soft, the kind of unguarded expression Kirishima had never seen before. "Oh my God!" Kirishima breathed, scooping Riku up and half laughing, half crying. "You did it, Riku! You really said it!" Riku laughed too, delighted by the noise and their reactions. Bakugou stepped closer, still dazed, eyes locked on the little boy reaching for him. Kirishima looked up through damp lashes, his voice breaking on a laugh. "He knows who his dads are!" Bakugou swallowed hard, trying for his usual scowl, but voice came out softer than he meant it to be.
"Shut up, idiot."
Kirishima just smiled through his tears, pressing Riku closer. "Not a chance!" Bakugou exhaled and finally gave in, reaching out to take Riku. The baby fit easily against his chest, warm and solid, tiny fingers catching in his shirt. Bakugou stared down at him for a long moment, something fragile flickering in his expression.
"Hey, kid,"
he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper.
"Not bad."
Riku looked up at him, eyes bright, and babbled another stream of sounds, half laughter, half nonsense, but somewhere in the jumble both Papa and Dada seemed to tumble together. Bakugou huffed a small sound that might have been a laugh. Kirishima grinned, wiping at the corner of his eyes. "Think he's trying to say them both now?" Kirishima said quietly. Bakugou's scowl was automatic, but the fondness beneath it was unmistakable.
"Tch, little copycat."
Riku giggled again, tiny hands batting at Bakugou's chest. Bakugou just shook his head, muttering something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like smartass. Kirishima laughed, leaning his head against Bakugou's shoulder. He gets it honest. Bakugou didn't argue, not this time. Kirishima shifted closer, resting his head on Bakugou's shoulder. Riku's babbling quieted between them, tiny fingers tapping against Bakugou's chest in a steady rhythm. The apartment was still except for that small, perfect sound. For a long time, they just sat there, Kirishima brushing a hand through Riku's hair, Bakugou's arm wrapped protectively around both of them, the warmth of their little family holding steady against the fading light. Kirishima smiled softly. "These are the good parts, huh?" Bakugou huffed a quiet laugh.
"Yeah, guess they are."
Riku yawned, murmuring something that sounded like both of their names mashed together, and Bakugou's rough thumb traced gentle circles against his back. The city hummed faintly outside. Inside, it was only the three of them, warm, safe, and whole. When Riku mumbled, "Papa," again, soft and sleepy, it felt like the heartbeat of their new life. Chapter 10. The Story of You. The night was quiet. The kind of quiet that made the soft hum of the city outside feel distant and safe. Riku, a little older now, tall enough that his knees peeked out from under the blanket, yawned, curling against the familiar weight of his stuffed shark. Kirishima sat on the edge of the bed, brushing a hand over Riku's hair, while Bakugou leaned against the headboard, arms crossed, pretending to be unimpressed, but glancing at his son with a soft edge to his eyes. "One day," Kirishima murmured, voice low, almost a whisper, "we'll tell you the story of how you came to us." Bakugou snorted quietly.
"Tch, kid won't believe it anyway."
Riku's eyelids drooped, but he mumbled a soft, hopeful, "Story?" before his head sank back to the pillow. "Maybe not," Kirishima said, smiling as he smoothed the blanket around Riku's shoulders. "But it's a good story, one worth knowing." Years passed in small, unremarkable ways. Morning pancakes, scraped knees, bedtime stories about heroes and monsters, laughter spilling through the apartment like sunlight. And always the story of how he came to them lingered in the corners, promised but not yet told. Tonight, the apartment felt quieter than usual, the soft hum of the streetlights outside matching the hush inside. Riku rested against Kirishima's chest, Bakugou's hand brushing over his hair under the blanket. "Ready, kid?" Kirishima whispered. Riku nodded sleepily, a small smile curling at his lips. "Ready." Bakugou grunted, leaning closer.
"Tch, you better believe this one."
Kirishima's voice softened, full of awe and something like wonder. "Do you remember the story we promised to tell you?" Riku blinked up at him, cozy under the blanket. "Mm-hmm." "Well," Kirishima continued, brushing a hand over Riku's hair, "it's all started the night after the mission. Something happened, something I'll never forget. That night, I had a dream about you. About our life together, me, Dada, and you. Everything we'd have, all the moments, the laughter, the messes, the hugs. We woke up, and you were there, in our bed, just there. We didn't know what to do at first, panicked even. But then," he smiled softly at Bakugou, who squeezed his hand under the blanket. Bakugou's tone was low, a little rough around the edges, but steady.
"Yeah. You just showed up, and well, We figured it out as we went. Didn't have much choice.
And that's how you ended up being here with us, Kirishima murmured, soft voice and full of warmth. Riku blinked, eyes half shut by the golden glow of the bedside lamp. "'Cause you dreamed me?" he whispered. Bakugou's hand found Kirishima's under the blanket, squeezing gently.
"Yeah, kid. Best damn dream we ever had."
Alright, friends, I hope you guys enjoyed this story. As normal, the fic will be linked in the description below. This one on AO3 is not formatted like my normal ones, so if you go over there and look at it, just be aware. I've tried to fix it a few times, and it just doesn't want to be fixed. And I also really just don't feel like fighting with it. So it's more like it would be in a book, instead of how I normally write my fan fictions. But if you've listened to it here, then you don't necessarily need to go over there and read it, but you can if you want to. So yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this one. Like I was saying in the very beginning, I love the Raven Cycle series, and there's a character in there who, Takumi Yume is kind of based off of. One of the characters in that book can bring items out of dreams, and I was like, man, that's like very much like a quirk from My Hero. And I just decided that I was going to turn it into a My Hero Academia fanfic, because quirk babies are a thing all the time. So I kind of they're not really like an overlapping like crossover type fic. I just used the idea of the one of the main things from the story as like an idea for a quirk here. Yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys will consider subscribing to the channel, coming to check out some of the amazing things that are coming, because there's a lot of stuff coming for the rest of this year. I already have the whole rest of the year planned out. There's a post about it, and some amazing stuff coming. So if you guys come back and check out any more of those videos, then I'll see you next time.